Hello. Hello. You doing well? Welcome. Welcome to the Endgame recap. It is... Wait, I'm Kyle Stolick. Got that? Okay. It is 3/28/2025. I guess that's March 28th, 2025. It is Dodger opening day here in Echo Park. Well, the 27th. You're listening on 28th. You know how it goes. And it's absolutely insane outside. There are sirens going off, cars burning out, music playing, multiple avenues of music. I'm excited. You know what I wish, though? I wish tickets weren't so expensive and just the whole experience of being there, sitting down, getting beer, getting food wasn't so expensive. You know, like, why can't it be cheaper? Come on. And I cannot talk about sports without mentioning the requisite. Okay, if you're going to be called the Los Angeles Dodgers, you should be owned by the city. I don't care about the well-researched reasons why that's maybe a bad idea. All I know is I would like to go to a Dodger game for a cheap price and know that the money that I'm throwing into that comes back into the city or the local community that I'm in. Because I'm just a few blocks away from Dodger Stadium right now, people. And not only is parking awful, traffic is awful. Yes, people come in and they bring tourism money and they really, help out local businesses, but it's an absolute nightmare for residents. They don't do anything for us. In fact, years ago, the mayor of Los Angeles actually put out a blog and saying, is parking too expensive at Dodger Stadium? Here are the streets where you can walk to the stadium and it's free parking. And they listed mine there. Oh, so people always ask me. I was at a gaming event last year, and they're like, what part of Los Angeles are you from? And I said, Echo Park. And they said, oh, you must be a big fan of the Dodgers. And I said, I love baseball, but I hate the Dodgers. I would own season tickets if it was accessible and they helped out my community, but I can't do that. Anyway, I digress. This is a gaming podcast. How are you doing, everybody? I am so excited. I'm still gainfully unemployed. And I say gainfully because I am building my resume. I'm developing content. I am doing this podcast that you are so generously dedicating your time to listening. Thank you very much for that. And creating content and doing all that. So keeping busy, but still unemployed. And I'm actually excited just because there's so much cool stuff coming out and happening in games. Got a great episode of news for you today. Atom Fall just came out. ATOM, not ADAM. Atom Fall. And it's from Rebellion, I think. Isn't it? Yeah. Developed by Rebellion, published by Rebellion. They're known for the zombie, was it Nazi zombie World War II thing. Great. I love that. And they also do Sniper Elite, I think, right? Yeah. Anyway, that's out. Got a couple games. I've been playing a lot of this role-playing game on Steam. It's called Aneurysm 4, and I heard it came from maybe a Gary's Mod server, but it's so fascinating. It's one of my favorite experiences of the last few years, and it's kind of my first dip into the role-playing type of thing. You start out as this character, this low-level zombie-looking thing, and then you have to do menial tasks in the world, like mining and smelting and doing laundry even. And before long, you can pick a different class after that. But there's different things that you do in each class, and you contribute to it. And you can build up like kind of currency that lets you pick these classes. But if you die, at a high place, you're dropped down like a peg or two, even at all the way to the bottom. So people really, when they're on, they protect or live in that character. And I'm putting out a longer first impressions video for it later on. Maybe this week, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week. I don't know. I got to edit it. And it's it's just wacky. It's just people really get into the role play. There was a situation where I lost sanity because I had seen so many murders happen in the game. So I had to go to this club where they actually had some really good dance music playing. I was shocked. And I was talking with all like the low-level people like me, like, what'd you see? You know, and just kind of talking about the day, the working day that we all had. And then a cop came in, and I apparently got too close to him, and he started beating me, and he eventually killed me. And the people around me were egging it on. And eventually they were like, oh no, officer, he didn't do anything. So I got that on clip. I posted on social. Fun game. It's called Aneurysm 4. Go check it out. The other stuff, I just got into the beta, open beta for Fatal Fury City of the Wolves. Can't wait to play that. Been playing a bunch of Marvel Rivals. Got a whole lot about that to talk about. In the background right now, I have the Path of Exile 2 stream happening because I want the drop that comes from watching that, the in-game drop. And I got into the Neighbors Suburban Warfare playtest. Been doing a bunch of Elden Ring, Hades 2 on the Steam Deck. And there's this tower defense roguelite that came out, and it's called Nordhold. And I think I'm going to be streaming that this weekend, if not later today. So lots of games. How can't you love this industry? It's great. Love it, love it. All right, let's get into the news. The real reason why you listen, because this is your preferred source of video game news, right? Like, how can't it be? I'm talking about stuff that people on the gaming sites aren't talking about very often. The things that matter, people. This is it. We should syndicate this show, right? People around the world need to know my perspective. Okay, this one says, Helldivers 2 director says, quote, balance is a myth, and devs shouldn't spend more than 5% of their time on it. He says, if you balance out all the chaos, you've made an uninteresting game. The story goes on. Helldivers 2 director Johan Plestet reckons game developers are spending too much time on balance and not enough time on fun. Balance is a myth. Fun first, balance later, he said. Game designers nowadays are obsessed with balance. Balance is 5% of the work that you should be doing. It's the polishing state of game design. If you start thinking about balance and using that as the method for success, you're an idiot. Balancing is not game design. Game design is about experience. If you balance out all the chaos, you've made an uninteresting game. Balance is the polishing of the object. And if you smoothen that out too much, it will just be a non-experience. I think there's lots of truth to that, right? And that's certainly what works for him in Helldivers 2. As a live service game that has so many people, he has this really great advantage, and especially if it's co-op, you know, of trying different things out, having a touch and go policy for things, turning the dials at will. Whereas a PvP game doesn't always have that, right? In a game like Dota, it's never balanced, but they're always trying to get something close to it to increase the amount of characters that people use to really facilitate a lot of creative thinking instead of, you know, this is the meta game design in that environment. So I like his approach. I like other people's approaches. We don't need to talk about who is more right than the other. This is the video game industry. Let people do what works for them. Yeah, Kyle. Yeah. So I've been playing a lot of Marvel Rivals, and I certainly have some problems with it. But on the subreddit, they ask that question. What is your main problem with Marvel Rivals? And some people said, you shouldn't need to go to the website for full ability information. And I thought that was really interesting because there's a lot of things about the game that you learn through playing that you could just go to the website for. Things like, I didn't realize that Groot's walls that he puts up with the shift key hit enemies when they're attacked nearby. So it's like concussive damage or successive damage to it. Great. Other things that people said is the main problem, my skill level. There's 37 characters in the game. 8 of them are supports, 9 of them are tanks, and then there's 20 DPS. Yeah, that's a problem. The game has a serious DPS problem. We need more supports and tanks, people said. The people. Way too many DPS. Quick play matchmaking. Map selection. Yep. So, I mean, I'm sure the development team knows this. It's a super popular game right now. They're probably adding a ton of content, but more characters. ASAP, for sure. Supports. It's weird how, like, I don't really like the support right now because there just isn't a character that jives with me for the support. So I mainly tank, and apparently that's the most in-demand class, so I'm that guy. Taking one for my team, everybody. Literally, I guess. Or giving one for my team, you might want to say. Okay, so here's one that's making the news today. This one's hot off the press. Fresh off the press. Anyway. It says Ubisoft spins out new gaming subsidiary, Tencent, to take stake. So yeah, Tencent is investing in Ubisoft, so Ubisoft can continue. All right, it says Ubisoft on Thursday announced that it's creating a new gaming subsidiary with Chinese technology giant Tencent, investing 1.16 billion euros, that's 1.25 billion US, into the unit. The subsidiary will focus on Ubisoft's best-known games brands, including Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, according to the company. It will focus on building game ecosystems designed to become truly evergreen and multi-platform. Ubisoft said in a press release Thursday, backed by greater investment and boosted creative capacities, it will drive further increases in quality of narrative solo experiences, expand multiplayer offerings with increased frequency of content release, introduce free-to-play touchpoints, I'm sure everybody's happy about that, and integrate more social features, the company added. The investment from Tencent values a new subsidiary at 4 billion euros, Ubisoft said, implying a 4x multiple based on its average sales from full year 2023 to 2025. It highlights the strong value of Ubisoft's IPs, significantly reinforces its balance sheet, and enables the company to continue its efforts to become a more agile organization, unleash the full creative potential of its teams, and better align its resources with the constantly evolving expectations of players, Ubisoft said. How do you feel about that, everyone? Tencent's getting more involved with another gaming company. Ubisoft is going to continue. It sounds like there's going to be more modern gaming stuff that we've come to know and intertwined with Ubisoft. Maybe more games, maybe something else. What would you like? Would you like that? Does that sound good to you? Let me know. Let me know in the comments. All right, this one says nearly 30,000 people attended. Here, let me read that again. Nearly 30,000 people attended GDC in 2025. The organizers of this year's Game Developers Conference have revealed that almost 30,000 people were in attendance. The number matches 2024's figure, but there was an increase in exhibitors at San Francisco's Moscone Center from 325 to 400. Over 1,000 speakers took part in the event, which hosted 750 sessions, workshops, roundtable discussions, and networking opportunities. GDC 2025 also introduced the first annual GDC Nights After Hours event, which ran on March 17th and March 20th, which welcomed more than 6,000 attendees. I didn't go. I heard it was great. There's a lot of people talking doom and gloom. There was a lot of people talking about good stuff. There was a lot of people talking about the middle ground, commenting on each other's stuff. I don't know. Apparently the audio side was good. Those people are always cool. Shout out to Damien for posting something really interesting. My buddy Damien, working in game audio, posted something good on LinkedIn. So cool to see. You know, some of the stuff I heard out of it is like, they're saying there's too much crypto, there's too much blockchain, there's too much this. There's doom and gloom around traditional game development. There's a lot of people saying like there's scams. I think the saddest part is I mentioned this last week, people spending like their last dime. I actually talked to some people about not going because I just didn't think it was a worth of their, limited funds at the time. And I think it used to be a place where you could network and look for a job. But these days, it sounds like it's more B2B and sharing of information and resources, that type of thing. I wish I could go. That's what I like. I wish I could wear a mask and just sit and take in the information from every really good talk. Like the socializing and stuff, it always feels like a burden to me. I just want to learn. There's so many people around that all I want to do is just take in the information and just gorge on that. And then I wish there was like a separate 3 or 4 days where I could just network. Because like I'm so focused on learning in those moments that it's a little hard to shift gears sometimes. Is anyone else like that? Am I weird? I'm weird. I know I'm weird. Yeah. All right, moving on. It says, I don't know how to say his name. Forgive me on this. Cristiano Ronaldo joins Fatal Fury video game franchise. And it says, Ronaldo announced that his latest foray into the world of entertainment will see him included as a playable character in a new video game that is set to hit the market next month. Ronaldo, 40, revealed on Instagram that he will be a part of the roster in the new Fatal Fury City of the Wolves game, which sees the classic Japanese arcade franchise resurrected for the first time in 26 years. Voiced by actor Juan Felipe Sierra, Ronaldo's character uses a glowing ball to inflict flamboyant football-style attacks on his opponents, including step-overs, sliding tackles, and overhead kicks. His special finishing move appears to consist of a trademark full-throttle set piece which sees Ronaldo charge toward the dead ball and simply smack it against the midriff of his adversary from close range, as if he were stationed in a defensive wall, which feels like an incredibly lifelike touch. After vanquishing his foe, Ronaldo, of course, then celebrates by leaping to the air and hitting the Swee amid a billowing cloud of electrical sparks. So a lot of people are surprised by this. They can't figure this out. And I think that's mainly people that are north of the equator and north of the U.S. border with Mexico. Now, people south of the border are very familiar with the Fatal Fury type of franchise. And I didn't learn about this until Evo kind of made it known, but those arcade units have often proliferated like any country south of our border for some reason. I got to look into this a little bit more, and I probably should have researched before I jumped on here. But I find that interesting. You know, North America or the U.S. is very much driven by Mortal Kombat, I'd say, is probably the biggest one. Soul Calibur at some point was big, you know, Street Fighter, of course, Tekken, Smash Brothers, those types of games. But south of the border, Fatal Fury is very popular. So this is a really smart move on their part. I don't know how much they paid for it and what they expect to get out of it in sales, but if it's a long-term investment in the franchise and looked at that way, brilliant. Way to go on that one. I think you did a cool thing. This one says fan favorite video. All right, I need a drink before this. All right, here we go. This is that Newsweek. Good job reporting on the video game industry, mainstream. Fan favorite video game magazine Game Informer has returned from the dead. Woo, fanfare. On March 25th, 2025, Game Informer editor-in-chief Matt Miller announced that the publication was officially back under new ownership. On top of that, the entire Game Informer team had returned as well. The whole team has returned, and we can't wait to connect with you again, Miller said in the official announcement. Miller went on to say that the rights for Game Informer had been secured by Gunzilla Games. although Game Informer remains an independent editorial outlet. Game Informer now operates under an entity called Game Informer Inc., and our intent is to continue to focus on highlighting the coolest games, celebrating the history and legacy of the gaming industry, and shining a spotlight on the creators and players who are charting its future, Miller said. I am deeply grateful for the trust and enthusiasm from the team at Gunzilla Games. They see the same potential in Game Informer as our team does. Excuse me, and their encouragement to do so ethically and free of outside pressure is laudable. So I think it's cool. I think we've seen this before happen with G4, and that was with, a very piece of legacy type of media coming back and trying to fit into today's world. I don't know what the business plan is for Game Informer. I hope they have that on lock. I really hope that what they can capture about the excitement that I had from Game Informer before was that they did a really good job of making game announcements and game reveals feel special. And they came to studios that I was working on and had relationships, and it was, I think there's an element of pay to play in getting that cover, but what you get out of it is good reporting and good in-depth coverage of your game. So yeah, it's marketing, but someone needs to fund a deeper look into this industry, into the game making process, into the creative minds that make these games. I think sometimes we're too dependent on either consumer journalism, if you will, and influencers trying to fill that void. Sometimes they have the access and sometimes they don't. I think sometimes we're relying on internal community manager teams and social media teams to do that. Or maybe, if a company can afford it, an external agency that they hire to put together things. But there needs to be an avenue for more considered discussions and presentations of these things. And hopefully there's still an audience for that. So I wish them nothing but the best of luck. And I have a special place in my heart for them because they're Minnesota people. And I used to work just down the road from Game Informer folks. So good luck, everyone. If you're listening to this, reach out. I'd like to talk to you guys about what you're working on. Hey, you create some content. I create some content too. Let's work together. This one is at Reddit, and we're about halfway through the podcast, maybe a little bit more. I always try to break it up a little bit with some of these questions to you, the listener. All right, let's start this. It says, what game reignited your passion for gaming when you had lost interest? And the OP says, I'm looking forward to Atomfall tomorrow, and I'm hoping it is like what Prey 2017 was. I've never played anything else like that. I also played The Forest recently, and it was a lot of fun. And the top answer says, seriously, getting more sleep. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think get more sleep. Don't play games when you're feeling crashed out, and you'll appreciate them a little bit more. Other people said Baldur's Gate 3 didn't so much reignite my passion for gaming as it did restore my faith in what a AAA game should be. Other people said Breath of the Wild, Control, I was completely burnt out and it was a real breath of fresh air. Helldivers 2, it's 15 seconds of fun happening over and over again. The player is always in control, no bullshit cutscenes, cool lore that isn't shoved down your throat. And then it says, it gives me the feeling I had when I used to play Halo with my buddies. Yeah. Some people said Cyberpunk 2020 or 2077, Elden Ring. For me, there were a couple. There was one that was, I think, Street Fighter 4, maybe fall in love with fighting games again during a time when I was kind of bored with games. That reignited that love. And then when I started competing in it, it definitely brought that back. The Journey was a big one for me. That really brought back my love for games. It was just, I hadn't really seen a game that presented an environment through this medium where I could relax. And I played it at I played it at a lot of conventions, and I met with the team. I met with Kelly Santiago, Genova Chen, and I only played the single player version of it. And then when it came out, I played multiplayer, and I met a few people in the initial area, and then later on, I met one player that I finished the game with, and he added me as a friend after, and you could only like ping the other person to communicate with them, like ping. There's no voice chat, and he would ping me and like act really caring if my character struggled in something, and he was very patient with me. And it was so funny after when he added me as a friend, I saw that the only games that he really played were like Madden and Call of Duty. And through this, relaxing game, I met someone who plays completely different games than I do. And it was just an interesting crossover experience for the two of us. I never talked to him after that either. It was just kind of cool that we had that moment. I'm not tearing up, don't worry. I'm not crying on this one. But it was just neat. It was cool. Okay, so Nintendo had their big Nintendo Direct. Okay, it's where their big live stream is. And Nintendo revealed virtual game cards for the Switch 2. I'm not going to read the news item. I'm going to read a little bit of a separate write-up for that. So, it says, think of it like digital game cartridges. You can buy a game digitally, but it acts like a cartridge you can pop in and out. Move it between consoles easily so it's not locked to one machine. You can lend it to a family member if you're under the family plan kind of thing for up to 2 weeks, like a digital hand-me-down. You can even trade or resell these virtual games in the future. They're looking into it. Basically, they're trying to make digital games work more like physical ones, shareable, swappable, and not stuck forever on one device. As some of you may know, I worked at a company called Robot Cash that their whole thing was that you could resell digital games. So I'm very, very excited to see this happening right now. So let's see. Nintendo, does anyone innovate more in this industry than Nintendo? It's just brilliant. Give people what they want, the ability to sell their digital games. Switching gears a little bit here. I want to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, and it's going to get a little serious, so just buckle down a little bit. It says, video games can't escape their role in the radicalization of young men. The article continues. There is a lot of attention on young men and toxic masculinity at the moment. It's about time. I agree. The devastating Netflix drama Adolescence about a 13-year-old boy accused of murdering a girl after being radicalized by the online manosphere has drawn attention to the problem through the sheer force of its brilliant writing and a blistering lead performance from teenager Owen Cooper. Recently, former England football manager Gareth Southgate gave a speech about the state of boyhood in the UK, specifically about how young men lacking moral mentors are turning to gambling and video gaming, thereby disconnecting from society and immersing themselves in predominantly male online communities where misogyny and racism are often rife. There has been some kickback in the gaming press to the idea that games have provided a less than ideal environment for boys. But even those of us who have played and enjoyed games all our lives need to face up to the fact that gaming forums, message boards, streaming platforms, and social media groups are awash with disturbing hate speech and violent rhetoric. And I'm going to take a break here really quick. That is absolutely true. Games are not providing safe environments for young men. And young, really quick. Young, impressionable young men. It's a very dangerous situation because there is no immediate solution. It requires a collective agreement to do better. And what I fear is that without financial incentives, or let's call it heavy-handed, but in a good way, oversight, change won't come. I'm a big fitness nut. I am 100% natural. I see young men go to my own gym and gyms I've gone to in the past that are in their early 20s and juicing. And if you pay attention to a lot of the online male fitness world, kids as young as 15 and 16 are starting on gear, which means stuff like steroids, tren, human growth hormone, testosterone, all that stuff. And not only are they looking like they're in their 30s when they haven't even hit 20 yet, because it alters your face, they're getting massive amounts of back knee, and it causes long-term damage, potentially heart problems. If people take these, they may have to be on testosterone replacement for literally the rest of their lives. So if you start in your teens, that's a whole life of having to go to the doctor and take this. That's not good. So, and I can point fingers at a lot of things. We won't do that necessarily right here, but this article has a point. And I know I'm spending a lot of time on this one, but I need to continue on this because it really matters to me. And I hope that at least one of you listening thinks about this and thinks about what you can do personally. And if all you do is you tell someone else about this problem that's happening, that's fine. But please start having serious conversations about this. We need to protect kids. We need to protect the young men in this industry. It's imperative. It's an obligation to ourselves to protect the next generation. So the article continues. What can be done? Of course, the games industry has a responsibility, just like social media companies do, to monitor its communities and make them safe. Robust online moderation and the use of AI to monitor in-game chat for key slurs and subjects are a vital part of combating the problem. But in the long term, the problem of abusive, antisocial young men won't go away until we get to the source. Many young men in 2025 lack a sense of direction, identity, and purpose. Traditional careers are disappearing. Social changes are challenging historical masculine roles. Mental health services are hard to access. City centers are dying. And what they don't mention here is third place. It was, I think there's called third place areas. Generally, areas you can go to that cost little to no money. Things like libraries, parks. I was talking to my wife the other day about how the bar is quickly not becoming a third place anymore because with inflation increasing, especially in this area, a mixed cocktail drink will cost you, $15 to $20. So, and then if you want a beer, it's a minimum of $9 or $10. So the idea of just going for a quick beer or two and seeing your friends or just hanging out alone at the bar, which is totally okay. As sad as it sounds, it's a very enjoyable endeavor. It's not financially possible for a lot of people unless you're above a tax bracket. So continuing on here with the article, whatever the truth of the matter, whatever we want to say about privilege, the world feels openly hostile to them. And into this vortex come online influencers who will harness, direct, and ultimately monetize that sense of hopelessness and rage, pointing it at easily identifiable targets: women, immigrants, libtards, beta males, and yes, the makers of progressive video games. This person writes, I'm kind of pleading here at the end, I have spent my whole career defending video games as a medium from those who seek to demonize the entire culture. but you simply cannot approach this subject without recognizing that the games community, traditionally dominated by young men interested in violent power fantasies, is part of it. Young people often come to games to escape, to become virtual superheroes, but their vulnerability and lack of experience makes them targets and victims. It's going to take more than one brilliant TV drama to get society to address this pressing problem. But when it does, the games industry is going to have to be a big part of the difficult conversations to come. Let me check out who this writer is really quick. Keith Stewart. I want to be your friend, man. That's brilliant. Could not have said it better myself. Well done. Well fucking done. Okay, moving on to the next one. Okay, here's a game I bought. I haven't played it yet. My brother did. It looks hilarious. Hilarious. Don't ask why I haven't played some of these games, but it says, the headline, "Thank goodness you're here. You're here's." Let me read that again. I got a text, but it said, it was a Snapchat one. Snapchat asked me to put notifications on so I don't miss messages. I put it on, and now they keep sending me, "I think you'll like this clip." And then it's done in that horrible, like every platform, they present news in such a fucking lame way. Did you know that they each have the way they speak? People on YouTube talk a certain way. People on Snapchat talk a certain way. People on TikTok talk a certain way. People doing YouTube shorts talk in a different way. We just talk like fucking normal people. I don't know. Anyway, I digress. Let me read this again. "Thank goodness you're here's developer says it was trying to design a game normally before realizing, quote, we were shit at video game design." So funny. Article continues. "Thank goodness you're here was probably the biggest surprise of 2024 for me. A tiny 2-hour indie game where you literally just stroll around Yorkshire helping the locals with their menial requests outdid AAA juggernauts like Silent Hill 2 and Black Myth Wukong and became one of my favorite games of the year. And while the game itself is a fun little adventure game in its own right, what makes it shine is the fact that it's probably the funniest game I've ever played. Wandering around a town and seeing signs like 'Bring Back Asbestos,' dealing with a rodent problem in the Price Shaggers supermarket, only to venture into a mini market called Mice Shaggers and a recurring gag about a Princess Diana memorial plate. Literally every second of screen time of the game is filled with something to laugh about, and it's so funny that I didn't even list Matt Berry being in it as one of the highlights there. Obviously, comedy is very subjective. What some find funny may be lost on others, and building a cohesive game on top of that is bound to be a challenge. But as it turns out, that wasn't much of a concern for Cole's Supper, with the developers saying, we just put in what we thought would be funny, provided the scope was presumed to be more or less manageable, without much regard to the overall structure, adding, our attempts to enforce any structure top-down by shoehorning narrative arcs, creating flowcharts of abstract beats, and trying to derive a lock-and-key Metroidvania thing did little to remedy this because we'd already made our bed. We don't like other games, so these typical patterns and affordances couldn't easily be applied. If you don't like it, don't make something like that. How innovative. Lovely. Lovely, lovely, lovely. And as we do here, we always end on a good, positive, uplifting note. Let's dig into it. This one says, Alzheimer's early detection tests using video games could be as effective as blood tests and boost clinical trials. The article says, Alzheimer's early detection tests using video games developed by Rutgers University Newark researchers may help spot the disease using years before symptoms are noticeable and provide non-invasive form of dementia screening. The innovative Rutgers-Newark dementia tests match the results of a new generation of blood tests that reveal biomarkers for Alzheimer's disease and are widely available. However, this non-invasive form of screening is painless and doesn't require blood samples, bypassing the need for trained technicians. The tests could also be more cost-effective for doctors, according to Rutgers-Newark researchers. The study comes from the Aging and Brain Health Alliance at Rutgers-Newark, which focuses on the role of lifestyle and genetics in delaying Alzheimer's. Their latest discovery could be a boon to pharmaceutical researchers, since it points to a non-invasive way to choose drug trial participants who are in the earliest stages of the disease, said neuroscientist Mark Gluck, the lab's director. That could shave years off a clinical trial timetable. Researchers would no longer have to wait for the disease to be conventionally diagnosed. Doctors now believe changes in the brain start 10 to 15 years before they produce obvious impairment. It's pretty exciting for us because even before any problems with cognition become obvious, we have an early warning sign, said lead author Murray Budak of the Center for Molecular and Behavioral Neuroscience. The study appears in the journal Alzheimer's Research and Therapy. Over the past 20 years, the Aging and Brain Health Alliance developed and tested the computerized video game screening to detect reduced brain function years before patients or their loved ones notice symptoms. Now they have more evidence confirming that is effective. Gluck envisions a day when these tests can be administered at a doctor's office on a laptop or even remotely over the internet for patients who no longer drive or lack easy access to medical care. The video game test, called the generalization task, measures cognitive ability by showing how well a person can deduce a rule related to colors and shapes, then apply that rule to new examples. So cool, right? Video games beyond the entertainment aspect. Anytime someone says, hey, games are just for entertainment, you go, you don't listen to Endgame Recap, do you? Well, let me send you an article that its host Kyle Stolick, this amazing community manager and strategist in game with over 18 years or so of experience, talked about. It's not a plug for me or anything. Let's get me employed. Okay. I like jobs. I really miss being employed. Come on. You know someone, right? You know someone. I just miss, honestly, the collaboration. That's what it's all about. Talking to someone working on a cool project that you're all like, yeah, we did that. You know what I mean? Anyway, I digress. Who cares about me? Go out there this weekend. Have fun, people. Remember, no matter how bad the week is, if you got the weekend off, that's your time to find some fun in this world. Have some fun in life. Take it easy. Don't take everything so seriously. Hey, okay. Yep. Enough preaching. Love you, everybody. Go be good. Bye-bye.